All right, let's unlock some secrets today. We're going on a deep dive.
Ooh, sounds intriguing.
It is. We're diving into something most of us just scroll past, those terms of service.
Ah, the infamous fine print.
Exactly. Specifically, TikTok's terms of service. The November 2023 update. The one for us U.S. users.
I bet most people don't even realize they exist.
You're probably right.
Mm.
But we're going to find out what we actually agree to when we're, just scrolling through TikTok.
Yeah, when you think about it, it is kind of like a contract.
It is. It's a legally binding contract, actually, between you and TikTok, that is.
Laying down the law of the land, so to speak. Setting the stage for the entire TikTok experience.
Exactly. So first things first, the terms clarify your relationship with TikTok, the company, TikTok Inc., here in the U.S. Basically how you're allowed to interact with the app.
The ground rules.
And one thing that's really important to remember is that if you're under 18,
Yes.
you need a parent or guardian's permission to be on TikTok.
Absolutely. Parents, this is for you. You
Right.
got to have that conversation.
Yep. Talk to your kids about these terms, what they're agreeing to.
Definitely.
Because here's the thing. Just by using TikTok, even without signing anything, you're automatically accepting these terms.
It's like that terms and conditions box we all just click on.
Exactly. But the thing is, these terms have real consequences.
Oh, they absolutely do. And they also, incorporate TikTok's privacy policy and community guidelines, too.
Right.
I highly recommend checking those out separately, actually.
Good point.
The privacy policy, it goes into detail about how TikTok handles, your data, collects it, uses it, all that.
Yeah.
And the community guidelines, those outline, what you can and can't post, basically, what's allowed.
Speaking of rules,
Yes.
there's a whole section just for businesses. Like if you're using TikTok for work.
Right.
And it basically says that companies are responsible for how their employees use TikTok while they're on the clock.
Employers, take note.
Right. So you might want to set some guidelines for your team about responsible TikToking during work hours.
Smart move, because you know what? These terms, they're not static.
Ah, interesting.
TikTok can change them. Anytime, actually. And for any reason. New features, updates, or even legal changes.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense if you think about how much TikTok has changed even in the past year or so.
Right.
Constantly rolling out new features, it seems like.
Oh, yeah, they're always updating things. And they generally try to notify users about those big changes.
Okay.
But it's always a good idea to, check the last updated date.
At the top of the document, right?
Right, because you keep using TikTok after the changes are made. Well, you've agreed to the new terms, whether you've read them or not.
It's a moving target.
It is.
You got to stay informed if you want to make sure you're, comfortable with what you're agreeing to.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about your account. When you sign up for TikTok, obviously accurate, up-to-date information is important. And of course, we can't forget about password security.
Super important. Think of your TikTok account as your digital home. You want to keep it safe. So use a strong password. And be careful about who you share that login info with. Because, at the end of the day, you are responsible for everything that happens on your account. And any misuse could have serious consequences.
It's easy to forget that our actions online have real-world implications.
It's true.
And if you ever decide, you know what, I am done with TikTok,
Happens to the best of us.
you can delete your account.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, there's no coming back from that. Once it's gone for good, along with all your content.
The ultimate digital detox. So if you're thinking about hitting that delete button, make sure you've downloaded any content you want to keep.
Good advice. All right, so how can we actually use TikTok? This section of the terms lays out some pretty clear restrictions.
Okay, like what?
Well, you have to follow all applicable laws, of
Sure.
course. No unauthorized copying or modifying of the platform. And definitely no commercial use without their permission.
Makes sense. Respect TikTok's IP, right? Their intellectual property. And just use the platform responsibly.
Right, you wouldn't go into someone's house and start rearranging their furniture without asking, right?
Yeah.
Same principle online.
Exactly.
Okay, now for the serious stuff. The stuff that will actually get your content taken down. Prohibited content. First up, the harmful stuff. Viruses, spam, sharing other people's personal information. All big no-nos.
Of course. And then there's content that infringes on someone else's rights, right? Copyright violations, trademarks, things like that. Privacy breaches.
Right, so think before you post. Are you respecting the intellectual property rights of others?
Exactly.
And then, obviously, no offensive content.
Makes sense.
TikTok wants to, cultivate a positive environment for everyone. So things like hate speech, harassment, violence, anything that promotes discrimination or harm is strictly prohibited.
Right, and they actively monitor content,
Really?
to enforce those rules.
Oh, wow.
They have the right to remove anything that violates their terms, yeah. And they even analyze user content, including things like emails, to, personalize features, target ads, detect spam or malware.
That's a little unsettling.
Is it?
Well, I mean, yeah, it makes sense that they want to keep the platform safe and engaging, but it's just, I don't know, a bit unnerving to think about.
You're not wrong.
Our digital activity being constantly analyzed.
It is a reality of the digital age. Everything we do online leaves a trail of data.
Yeah.
And platforms like TikTok, they use that data to shape our experiences.
True. Okay, next big question. Who owns what in the TikTok world? Let's talk intellectual property.
This is where things get interesting. So TikTok, they own or license all the content they provide. The filters, effects, sounds, other platform features. They call this TikTok content. But anything you upload, videos, music, your creative genius, all that, that's user content. And you retain ownership of that.
So it's kind of like a digital art gallery.
Oh, I like that.
TikTok provides the space and some of the tools.
Yeah.
But the artists own their creations.
Exactly. But here's where it gets a little tricky. TikTok has the right to make money, to generate revenue from all user activity, including yours. Think ads, sponsorships, those virtual gifts.
Oh, right.
However, they're not obligated to share any of that revenue with you.
Wait a minute. So they can profit from our content without having to pay us.
That's right. It's a big point of contention, content ownership and monetization in the age of social media. The platform provides the audience the tools, but they keep the profits.
That's definitely something to think about. So what can we actually do with our content on TikTok?
Well, the license they give you, it's limited and non-exclusive.
Meaning?
Basically, you can use the service for personal, non-commercial purposes. TikTok holds the reins on pretty much everything else.
Okay, so no quitting your day job to become a TikTok influencer and sell merchandise without TikTok's say-so.
Not quite that simple. It's important to understand the boundaries of the digital playground, so to speak. Now, user content, the lifeblood of TikTok. You can upload all kinds of creative stuff. Videos, text, music, whatever.
Right.
And you can even use TikTok elements, those fun filters, stickers, effects.
Right.
But here's the thing. You still have to comply with their rules when sharing content on other platforms.
So even if I download my TikTok video and share it on Instagram, I still have to play by TikTok's rules.
Yep, it's like a digital passport. That follows your content. And here's where it gets really interesting. By uploading content, you are giving TikTok a broad license to use it, meaning they can allow other users, even third parties, to access and use your content too.
So my dance video could end up in a TikTok ad campaign.
Hypothetically, yes. It's all about the ripple effect, right? You put something out there, and it can take on a life of its own.
That's kind of the double-edged sword then, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, there's potential for your content to go viral.
Oh, absolutely.
Reach a huge audience, but you're also giving up a certain amount of control.
True. It's a trade-off. Something to think about. Now, there's this section about through to the audience rights.
Okay.
It often causes some confusion, so let me give you an example. Let's say you share your TikTok video on Facebook.
Right.
And for whatever reason, it leads to a copyright dispute. Someone claims they were defamed in your video. Facebook isn't responsible for those issues.
They're off the hook.
Exactly. They're just the messenger.
So all the responsibility still falls on the creator, even when content is shared across platforms.
Yep. Highlights the whole complex web of, responsibility and accountability in the digital age.
Now let's talk about the musicians and recording artists out there. This is where copyright and royalty-free licenses become really important.
Right. If you're using someone else's music in your TikTok videos, you got to make sure you have the legal right to use it.
Right.
It's about respecting the intellectual property of musicians. You can obtain permission directly from the copyright holder, or you can use royalty-free music.
So, no, just grabbing my favorite song off Spotify and adding it to my video.
Not unless it's specifically licensed for use on TikTok. They actually have a whole library of sounds that you can use without having to worry about copyright.
Okay, good to know. I'm starting to get a better handle on this whole intellectual property thing.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about user feedback. Ever had a brilliant idea for a new TikTok feature?
All the time.
Thought, they should totally do this.
Oh, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. That feedback even if it's groundbreaking, becomes TikTok's property the moment you share it.
Mm.
You can use it freely, and they have no obligation to compensate you.
Wow.
So even our thoughts and ideas are valuable in the digital world.
Apparently so.
It's something to keep in mind, I guess.
Definitely.
When we're providing feedback to these online platforms, essentially you're granting them full rights to use your suggestions however they see fit.
I had no idea.
Before we move on, let's just quickly recap some of these key terms we've been talking about. So first up, TikTok doesn't guarantee the service will always work perfectly
Right.
or meet all your needs. They also limit their financial responsibility for any damages that might occur.
No online service is perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There will be glitches, bugs, downtime.
Happens.
And while they do take steps to protect users, they're not responsible for everything that happens on the platform.
It's like driving a car.
What do you mean?
You take precautions, but you can't control every other driver on the road.
I see your point.
Right.
Okay. If you have a disagreement with TikTok, got to try to resolve it informally first.
Right.
Before taking any legal action.
Like a cooling off period.
Makes sense.
Most issues can be resolved through, communication and collaboration.
And finally, if you download TikTok through an app store, like, Apple's App Store or Google Play, you're subject to their terms of service as well.
It's like a layer cake of legalities.
I love that. You're agreeing to their rules on top of TikTok's rules. So buckle up because we're going to explore that App Store layer cake next.
Welcome back.
All right. So in part one, we, talked about a lot. Account creation, intellectual property, all that.
Just getting started.
But there's still a lot to uncover.
Oh, yeah. Let's take a closer look at those App Store terms. Remember, if you download TikTok through, Apple's App Store or Google Play,
right,
you're also agreeing to their rules on top of TikTok's.
It's like, agreeing to the house rules and the neighborhood rules.
Right, like a double whammy.
So let's start with the Apple App Store.
iPhone users, this is for you. So according to TikTok's terms, Apple, they actually play a pretty limited role in the agreement between you and TikTok. Think of them like a landlord. Provides the space for TikTok to exist in their app store.
So Apple provides the platform, but isn't really responsible for TikTok's content or functionality.
Exactly. They're not involved in maintaining or supporting TikTok, and they're not liable for any issues you might have with the app.
So if the TikTok app starts acting up, I can't call Tim Cook to complain.
Nope. You got to take that up with TikTok. However, there is one exception. If TikTok fails to meet any applicable warranties, you can notify Apple, and they might refund your purchase price.
If you paid for the app.
Right.
So Apple's got your back in that very specific situation.
Exactly. But when it comes to legal disputes, things get a little messy. Like, if a third party claims that TikTok is infringing on their intellectual property rights, Apple isn't responsible for dealing with that.
Right. They're just providing the storefront, not policing the products.
It's like they're saying, hey, we just provide the platform, you guys sort it out.
All right.
All right, now let's talk Google Play. Android users, listen up.
Android fans, what do we need to know?
Well, similar to Apple, Google has its own set of terms and conditions, right? Apply to apps downloaded from Google Play. And they cover a wide range of areas, like data privacy and content policies, all the way to payment procedures.
So even though it's a different app store, the concept's the same.
Yeah.
You're agreeing to their rules on top of TikTok's rules.
Yep.
A digital Venn diagram of legalities.
I like that.
All right. Let's talk data privacy.
The big one.
It's a hot topic these days, especially in the age of social media. And so TikTok's terms, they outline how they collect, use, and share your data.
Right.
So this includes, info you provide directly, like your name, email address, phone number, but also data they collect passively, like your browsing history, location, even the content you interact with.
Pretty much everything.
It's like they're building this, really detailed picture of who we are and what we do online.
They are. Makes you wonder what they're doing with all that info, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, according to their terms, they use your data to personalize your experience, show you targeted ads, improve their services, and comply with legal obligations.
So it's a mix of improving the user experience, advancing their business interests, I guess.
You got it. And they share your data with third parties, too. Advertisers, service providers, and in some cases, law enforcement.
Wow. That's a lot. I understand that personalized experiences and targeted ads are just like the norm now.
They are.
It still feels a little invasive.
Yeah, I get it. It's a valid concern. And the more you use TikTok, engage with its features, the more data they collect.
So every swipe, every comment, it all adds to this digital portrait.
It does. It's both fascinating and a little creepy, isn't it?
Yeah. Raises all these questions about the trade-offs, right? The trade-offs we make
Right.
for convenience and entertainment.
You got it. But it's not all bad news. TikTok does give you some tools and settings that allow you to control certain aspects of your data privacy.
Okay, so we're not totally powerless in this data dance.
No, not at all. You can limit who can see your videos. You can choose whether to allow personalized ads. You can even request a download of the data they've collected about you.
It's like a digital spring cleaning. We need to go in, tidy up our privacy settings.
Well, I like that.
Make sure we're comfortable with what we're sharing.
It's a good reminder that, managing our digital privacy is an ongoing process. It's not a one-time task. It's choices we make every time we go online.
So taking control of our data is possible. It just requires some effort and awareness. Speaking of control, let's shift gears and talk about content moderation.
Ah, yes, content moderation. This is a crucial part of TikTok's terms.
Definitely.
They have rules about what kind of content is allowed, and those rules are in their community guidelines.
Right. We touched on this briefly before. They want to keep the platform, safe and positive.
Exactly. Things like harassment, hate speech, violence, nudity, spam, basically anything that could create a harmful or negative environment, it's prohibited.
Right. So there are limits to what you can post.
There are. Even on TikTok, which is, known for its free-spirited creativity.
And how do they enforce these rules?
Well, they have a team of moderators, real people.
Okay. Who review content and take action against anything that violates their guidelines.
So there are actual humans behind the scenes trying to keep things in check.
Yes. But they also rely heavily on, automated systems.
Yeah.
Algorithms that can flag potentially problematic content.
So it's like a digital police force patrolling this vast online world.
That's a great way to put it.
But what happens if someone feels like their content was taken down unfairly?
That's a good question.
Algorithms aren't perfect.
No.
And human moderators can make mistakes, so.
Of course. And that's why they have an appeals process.
Oh.
You can submit a request for review if you believe your content was mistakenly flagged.
So there's a chance to plead your case, potentially get your content reinstated.
Exactly. It's all about ensuring fairness and transparency.
Okay, so let's talk about a specific type of content that often leads to problems. Copyright infringement?
Ah, yes, the digital battle over intellectual property.
With so much content being shared on TikTok. Copyright issues are bound to come up, right? They do. And TikTok has a system for dealing with those copyright complaints.
Right.
Copyright holders can submit takedown requests if they believe their work is being used without permission.
So if someone uses my song or video clip without asking, I can ask TikTok to take it down.
Yep. And they're legally obligated to respond to these takedown requests in a timely manner.
So they can't just ignore copyright infringement.
Nope. They have a responsibility to protect the intellectual property rights of creators. Now, this brings up an interesting point. TikTok has that, sounds feature.
Right.
Lets users add music to their videos.
Super popular.
It is. Where does the copyright for those sounds come from?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, TikTok, they have licensing agreements with music labels and publishers, allows them to offer that library of sounds that users can use in their videos.
That's like a digital jukebox.
It is.
With pre-approved tunes.
Exactly. This ensures that copyright holders get compensated when their music is used.
So it's a win-win.
In theory, yes. Users get access to a huge library of music, and music creators get paid. But things can get tricky when users start creating, remixes or mashups.
Right, because those new creations might not be covered by the original licensing agreements.
Exactly. It's an ongoing debate, actually, in the music industry.
Seems like the digital world is always blurring the lines.
It is. All right, let's switch gears again. Let's talk safety.
Okay.
The online world can be a bit of a wild west, and TikTok has a responsibility to protect its users, especially younger ones.
Absolutely.
So they have a number of safety features and policies in place, right?
Right. Like what?
Well, for instance, they have age restrictions to prevent kids from accessing, inappropriate content, reporting mechanisms for bullying or harassment, and resources for users who might be experiencing online abuse.
So they're trying to create a safer environment for everyone.
They are. They also have, educational materials and campaigns to raise awareness about online safety and being a responsible digital citizen.
So it's a multifaceted approach to online safety.
It is. And as technology evolves, new threats emerge.
Right.
TikTok has to adapt, like all platforms do.
Speaking of emerging threats, let's talk misinformation and disinformation.
The big infodemic.
It's a real problem. It seems like every time I open the news, There's a new story about fake news spreading online.
Oh, it's everywhere.
And because TikTok is, so popular for sharing information and news, it can be a breeding ground for false or misleading content.
It can.
And this stuff can have real-world consequences.
Oh, absolutely.
Influencing people's beliefs, their behaviors, even elections.
Right.
So what is TikTok doing to combat misinformation?
Well, they have policies and tools to, detect and remove false content. They also partner with fact-checking organizations to verify information and provide context.
So they're trying to stay ahead of the misinformation wave.
They are. It's a constant battle. How do you balance, freedom of expression with the need to protect users from harmful falsehoods?
Yeah, it's a tough question. No easy answers.
Nope.
But it highlights, I think, the importance of us as users being critical consumers of information online.
We can't just blindly accept everything we see on social media. Got to do our own research, verify information, and, be wary of anything that seems too good to be true.
Be skeptical. Now, in addition to misinformation, what about scams, phishing attacks?
Ah, yes, the dark side of the digital world. Wherever there's money and personal information involved, there'll always be those trying to take advantage.
And TikTok's no exception.
Right. So they have systems to detect and block suspicious activity.
Okay.
They also educate users about how to spot scams and phishing attempts.
It's like they're building these digital walls, sounding the alarm bells.
They are. But remember, we also have to play a role in our own online safety.
Right. We can't just rely on the platform to protect us.
Exactly. Be cautious, be skeptical, and avoid clicking on suspicious links or giving out your personal info.
It's about being a savvy digital citizen, protecting ourselves in this crazy online world.
Well said. Now let's talk about something that's often overlooked. Accessibility.
Oh, right.
The digital world should be accessible to everyone, regardless of their abilities.
Right.
And TikTok, to their credit, has made efforts to make sure their platform is inclusive and accessible to users with disabilities.
So what kind of features have they implemented?
Well, they have things like closed captioning for videos, screen reader compatibility, keyboard navigation.
It's great that they're thinking about these things.
It is. It's an ongoing process, though,
Right.
As technology advances, TikTok needs to keep pace with new accessibility standards and features.
Make sure the platform remains inclusive for everyone.
Exactly. Okay, before we wrap up this part, let's touch on TikTok's legal obligations.
Right.
They have to operate within the bounds of the law, like any company, right?
Of course. So it's not just about setting their own rules. They have to play by the rules of the legal system as well.
That's right. These legal obligations cover, data privacy, copyright, consumer protection, online safety.
Sounds like they have a lot of legal hoops to jump through.
They do. Yeah. And it's constantly changing,
Yeah, I bet. New laws, new regulations.
Yep. TikTok has to adapt.
It's a never-ending game of legal catch-up.
In a way, it is. But by upholding those legal obligations, they're demonstrating their commitment to operating responsibly.
Right.
Ethically.
Okay, I think we covered a lot of ground in this part. App Store terms, data privacy, content moderation, online safety, accessibility, legal obligations. But there's still more.
There is.
We're going to step back in part 3 and look at the bigger picture.
The broader implications of all of this.
And what it means for the future of social media. Welcome back to our deep dive into TikTok's terms of service. We've covered a lot, from creating an account to data privacy to content moderation.
It's been a journey, all the nuts and bolts, the safety measures, the legal stuff.
So now let's take a step back and look at, the bigger picture. What are the key takeaways from all of this?
Well, I think the first thing is those terms and conditions, the ones we usually just scroll past, they really matter. They really shape how we experience the digital world.
It's easy to just click agree, without thinking.
Yeah.
But it is a legal agreement, with real consequences.
Absolutely. And the second takeaway, I think, is that using TikTok, it requires balance, right? We want to enjoy the fun stuff.
Right, the creativity, the connection.
Yeah, all of that.
The entertainment.
Exactly. But we got to be aware of the potential downsides, too.
Right, the data privacy stuff, the challenges of content moderation, the risks of misinformation.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a complex world out there online.
It is. And the third takeaway, I think, is that we, as users, we have a responsibility, right?
To be informed.
To be informed, to be proactive. We can't just passively consume content. We got to understand the rules, manage our privacy settings.
Be critical thinkers.
Exactly. Take ownership of our digital lives.
Make informed choices. about how we're engaging with these platforms. So let's look ahead. How do you think these terms might change as TikTok, keeps growing and changing?
Well, I'd say we can expect to see updates, revisions, all that.
Makes sense.
As TikTok adapts to new technologies, new legal requirements, cultural shifts, all of that.
Data privacy is always evolving.
That is.
And these new technologies, like AI, they're raising new ethical questions.
Exactly. And then there's the whole regulatory landscape.
Right. The laws are changing, too.
Governments are figuring out how to regulate these big platforms.
It's really dynamic. These terms, they're not set in stone.
No, they're constantly changing.
Adapting. I guess it's important for us, for users, to stay informed, stay involved in these conversations.
Oh, for sure.
Our voices actually matter.
They do.
We can actually help shape the future of social media by advocating for, policies that protect our rights and interests.
It's not just about following the rules, it's about helping to make the rules.
Exactly. And I think that's an empowering thought. We're not just passive consumers of technology. We can actively shape this digital world.
That's the point.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away?
I'd say a greater awareness of the power dynamics at play. These platforms, they're made to be engaging, addictive even.
Right.
But we got to remember, they're businesses with their own goals.
That don't always align with our goals as users.
Exactly. So be mindful. Be mindful of the data you share, the content you consume, the choices you make online.
That's a good point. Our digital lives are a reflection of our real lives. So
exactly.
We got to treat them with care. Well, I think we've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We have. It's been great exploring these things with you.
Likewise. And to our listeners, keep exploring these issues, ask questions, be curious, and most importantly, be an active participant. Help shape the digital world you want to live in.
It's constantly changing, this world. And it's up to all of us to, navigate it wisely and ethically with a critical eye.
Well, that brings our deep dive into TikTok's terms of service to a close. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep questioning the digital world around you.